last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody in between. Welcome back to a brand new edition of Dark Matters Radio. And before I go anywhere with this tonight, I got to mention the fact that this is Halloween week. Now, most of my lifetime, I got to say, this has been one of my favorite times of the year, Halloween. These days, I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I've always loved Halloween and everything that it basically stands for. And this week, either tomorrow or Wednesday, I'm going to do something that I have not done in decades. My wife, Vicky, last week brought home this gigantic pumpkin, and it's been sitting in our living room, and I'm going to carve that sucker up. Oh, yeah, I can't wait. I don't know about you all, but I'll tell you, there's nothing quite that twitterpates me more than the smell of fresh pumpkin when you're digging the guts out of that thing. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, enough of that. Now, this week, we're going to be bringing on, well, hopefully the other one is going to show up, two citizen journalist broadcasters from YouTube. Manny is here, and before we started the show, Red Panda had not yet appeared, but we're going to be talking about what they have been doing with many individuals in the disclosure movement. What the heck is happening out there? What are we hearing lately? And something else, and of course I've mentioned this on previous broadcasts, 3-Eye Atlas. Still a lot of chatter out there, a lot of bogus information out there, bogus at least as far as I can determine. But that thing is winging its way through the solar system, and who knows where it's going to end up. Supposedly, the last date I heard that this thing will be, relatively speaking, close proximity to Earth, like maybe 130 million miles, if you consider that close, around the 17th of December. So just before Christmas. But this thing should be peeking out from around the sun before the end of the week is out, I think. So at any rate, without any more ado, let's go to the show. Joining us, of course, is Mark Center and Gerry Kissell. Gentlemen, good to see you. Welcome back.
You, sir.
And our guest, Manny. Is Manny there? Okay. And have we heard anything about Red Panda?
Yeah, I put it in the private chat.
Okay, very good. So, boys, what have you all been up to?
Well, I've been working on technology and seeing some movies. As you know, Don, we talk every day. And
that's not true.
almost.
We didn't
every day.
talk today. We didn't talk today.
Sometimes I've had my fill of Don Ecker, so I skip a day here and there.
Well, I can understand that.
And
you're talking right now. That's today.
And I saw I showed you guys the Billy Meyer book that I picked up, right? Because that used to be like $100, and now they're down to 20. And I said, I think I'll pick one up for no other reason than why not. So, and the money, I guess, went to Brett Elders. Who knows? I really don't know where the money went, but at least it wasn't that much money. And I'm enjoying the whistleblowers, Don. So many whistleblowers on YouTube. I'm hearing about all of these amazing stories. And I do notice that when I'm watching Vetted, you guys might not have stumbled upon the channel Vetted. I think he does a pretty good job. They routinely show clips that the Red Panda has ferreted out. And there's another guy, I can't remember his name. He also does movie reviews, and he's got a show. I'm not really impressed by his background, but he also uses the Red Panda stuff. So it's very nice to have younger people involved in this who are really going after it and collating information, making it available to people, boomers like us or adjacent boomers. And I'm very happy that that it's not completely polluted with lunatics, Don.
Well, I have seen a lot of reels on the web, on Facebook, other places, where Gen Z is stepping up, buddy. Gen Z is stepping up.
Yeah. I hear they don't want to get married and have kids, and they don't like sex in their movies. But other than that, they're stepping up.
Yeah.
What say you, Manny?
Oh, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me back. I always have a good time here when I'm hanging out with y'all. Red does a really good job of keeping his finger on the pulse of what's going on out there in social media as far as the UFO topic is concerned. He's got, his eyes open everywhere, and he's pulling stuff from congressional hearings. He's pulling stuff from podcasts, and he's really good at researching and finding obscure clips from old interviews as well, which are relevant. He's got that down. He's a great resource for people. If you haven't checked him out, you should out there. And another good one is Chupacabra, who is does the same
he was
sort of
in
work.
some hot water with some people this week. What was that about?
I'm not sure exactly. I think if it's the stuff I'm thinking of, it's backlash that's tied to the investigations of Luis Elizondo. So it's the Lou crew, the people who white knight for Lou on social media and attack his critics, are going after him because they don't like the fact
That's
that
what I
they're
saw.
calling
That's
it
what
out.
I was wondering about. So what was it he did that pissed them off?
I'm not sure that there was any one thing here recently other than he's like a dog with a bone, just like Red is and myself are, where we see this stuff and we call it out when we see it. They've been the last week, ever since the announcement of the Age of Disclosure coming out, Dan Farrow's Disclosure film that's got 34 of Mark's favorite whistleblowers in there, and not one lick of evidence, but 34 whistleblowers, that's coming out. So ever since that announcement was coming, that was going direct to video on Amazon, the Lou crew has been out there in force, just going after everybody, trying to control the narrative of Elizondo being a whistleblower and, of this disclosure movement, as they're calling it, which is not really about disclosure. It's about technology, as we all know. It's not. They're not really trying to get to the dope about what the government knew about Roswell and things like that. They just want the UFO that Lockheed allegedly has is their big push. But it seems like this last week they've been really stepping it up, and that's really interesting because it seems like, and this is the scuttlebutt around the coffee cooler, the water cooler, is that Elizondo was involved with a lawsuit with that filmmaker who had been his producer and his agent for years, and that there was some sort of falling out that they had over that movie, and that may have contributed as to it being delayed so long, because the movie initially aired almost 6 months ago at South by Southwest, where it was shown, and then Dan Farrow had made a few posts that he was trying to find a distributor for it, but was unable to find one, so he set up his own distribution company called I forget what it's called now, Relentless Distribution, and then just dropped it on Amazon Video on Demand, which is kind of crazy for something that's supposed to change the world, that nobody would want to pick that up and run it in theaters, or take the distribution for it and take the cut of a normal film distributor of 20 to 30% of the profits. There's something weird.
Also,
there.
Hey, to continue the haters in the group of people that will go after others. I'm no fan of Coulthard at all, because every time he appears on a camera, he's got some world-breaking thing to announce. Do guys like him and other people that are new on the scene, Lou is new, are there other groups of people who are following Coulthard and guys like that who are just going after people, or is it just Lou?
I would say that same group of people that supports Elizondo goes and supports other people that are in his clique, which is definitely Ross Coulthard, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Gary Nolan, all the same names that we've been hearing over the last 8 years. They're all pretty much tied to the same group of people. And they do sort of support them, but not as passionately, not as doggedly. Because these other people don't feed into it, and that's the difference. And we've seen this with Elizondo, where he actually follows these people. He actually communicates with them in Signal and in back channels and encourages them to do this stuff. And those other people like Coulthard, I don't think would stoop to that level. But it seems like Elizondo has no problem getting his hands dirty, as long as he has plausible deniability in that regard.
Right, and Coulthard's super busy because he's on so many shows and he's on the Real News and things like that, and Lou really isn't.
Yeah. Hey, Red Panda, welcome back to the show, buddy. How you doing?
What up? Can you hear me? Hello, test.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. And I got my
fine.
camera set up. I hadn't had this set up in a minute, so that's why it took me a little while. I was trying to figure it out, but it's all working now. Cool.
Oh, excellent.
Sweet. What's up, Red?
What up, Manny? Great to see you. Great to see you guys talking about this too, by the way. It's crazy what these people are doing right now, especially during this rollout. And I agree with what Manny's saying. There's this kind of like disclosure industrial complex, I like to call it, that does exist. But Lou is really the only one who I see like really actively like feeding it and like engaging with some of the like craziest people. Yeah. And it's really weird to me too. And I'd love to get the panel's thoughts on like, apparently he's the co-producer of Age of Disclosure and the star and the narrator of it. And he hasn't like posted about it at all. And I don't know if you guys talked about it or not, but like some of his little fan group right now is acting like particularly extra like crazy towards like me and Tupa and some other people right now.
Yeah, because I saw all of that hubbub this week, and that's what I wanted to ask about is what's that all about? Because I know it whittles down to Lou Elizondo and his people that are attacking Tuba and you, and I know Manny's been attacked enough.
By the same outfit, right?
Yeah.
Same little outfit of Disclosure
people.
Tonight, downstream from Lou. And even when Manny had his little thing go on, people showed up to his mom's house, which I think, it's like people want to just diminish all this to like dumb internet drama. But when you have like weirdo UFO people showing up to your mom's house, and even Lou Elizondo with his own sock puppet was harassing Manny's girlfriend, who's not even like a part of the community. That kind of behavior shouldn't be happening. So
no,
what
these
really,
people are worse than Antifa and some of these other organizations. They're rabid and they're out of their freaking minds.
Well, that's why the good Lord God built 2x4 clubs.
Right. Well, and bear mace and baseball bats and whatever else you keep by your door,
1911.
Come knocking.
Yeah, so I literally had to like take steps with law enforcement this past week and stuff. It's annoying as hell because they were like saying some very weird and suggestive language, and they're actively trying to get my channels taken down. And the gist of this recent thing, there's a few things. I'm actually making a little video about it, so I kind of have it like mapped out. But they don't like so like that little outfit that went after Manny and is currently like trying to like mess with me. They actually like doxed David Grush in this really weird way. Now, mind you, this is separate of the medical records thing. This is when he was initially coming out. And the TLDR on that is, as I could surmise, is that he was getting cold feet to come out. And then basically Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton on this other end had their little like minions, for lack of a better word, put this information out to kind of like force him out, which is actually something I've seen happen time and time again in this community. A few months ago, Kevin Day kind of doxed people, and this is a Nimitz witness, right? Kevin Day, and he's talked about his experience. I saw him. He posted a bunch of other people who were witness to that event who didn't want to go public. He put like all their information out there, right? So there's this kind of like element of people, even if you're not ready to, we're going to push you out because the train has to keep moving kind of thing. And so me and Tupa really uncovered that network, how it really came top down from Lou and Jay Stratton. And then so on top of that, we also had, did you guys see the recent congressional hearing, right, with the Hellfire? Dylan Bohr, Dylan Borland was one of the people who testified, and he hopped in one of our spaces and said that he and other whistleblowers have been listening to our spaces. And then also we had Rep. Eric Burleson hop in a space not too long ago, and Rep. Luna's kind of been engaging with me in Tupa's content. And the people even trying to get us taken down, saying all these weird threats, overtly say it's because of like Rep. Luna and Rep. Burleson that Congress is starting to listen to our narratives. Because another dynamic of this whole ecosystem that you guys luckily don't fall prey to is like the stuff that happened to Manny and the stuff that's happening to me and Tupa. Like everyone sees it, everyone knows. So there's this almost like people just don't talk about it, right? Like a lot of people who you think would talk about this, or if Sean Kirkpatrick was doing the same kind of behavior to like members of the community, they'd be all over it. They just act like they don't see it. So I think it's the combination of we are uncovering very real stuff, and we are now finally starting to get the ear of people who actually could do stuff like Congress and some of these other whistleblowers.
Well, these guys, they want to, basically be the noise gate for controlling information that flows outward. And that's weird for people to want that.
That almost sounds like a counterintelligence agent is running
the
whole thing, like a guy whose career was that, like maybe a guy like Elizondo who did that for 22 years for the Pentagon, Yeah, and
that's another great point too. I think something else they don't like that like we kind of been uncovering is the CIFA connection. Are you guys familiar with this? So I'll explain it broadly. So Lou Elizondo kind of has a blank gap in his timeline. And actually, Manny, when I was going through all this, I went back and rewatched your documentary again. And even you noticed, right? There was like this kind of blank period after 2000, before OSAP, where it's like, you're not really sure what exactly he's doing. He's kind of vague about it. Well, it turns out, and UAP Gerb reported on this, Stephen Greenstreet reported on this and said he has a source that said it. So it's not just hearsay, that he was part of an organization called CIFA, which was the Counterintelligence Field Activity Authorization. And it was created after 9/11 with the Patriot Act. And basically, these people were crazy. It had to be shut down. It was under Rumsfeld. And it was, they were infiltrating anti-Iraq war protest groups and breaking them up, as well as don't ask, don't tell protest groups, right? And they got in trouble for like gang stalking and planting plants on like, there was actually a news story because they were infiltrating Quaker groups and all this crazy stuff. On top of that too, which I think is really shady and kind of ties into all this, is they were contracting out for Lockheed Martin and Halliburton and Northrop Grumman, which is this kind of defense industry thing that we always hear about on this end, right? And then the third part too is they were shady as hell. They were setting up all these shell companies and like literally blackmailing hookers to get money for these contracts. And the one document we have so far of Lou Elizondo in CIFA is an employee. So there's this company called MZM that was blackmailing politicians, throwing these hooker parties. And an employee says, hey, I don't think we should be sending this contractor all this money. They haven't been performing to like standards and whatnot. And we gave him like $12 million last time. And Lou Elizondo's like, no, like give him the money. Sorry, I've got a little burp. But yeah, so he's like directly involved in kind of not just a shady organization, but like the shadiest elements of that organization. I'm curious, Manny, what do you think of that CIFA stuff? Because we haven't really, doesn't it all fit so well with what we're seeing?
It does. It does fit with the activities that we're seeing. It fits with his, the way that he views things and runs this like an operation. And it also fits, like you said earlier, with the timeline that I found in my Who's Lou movie, where there was a gap in the early 2000s where we couldn't really identify what he was doing. And he really glossed over it in his book. He didn't mention it and he doesn't talk about it. He never once has publicly stated that he had anything to do with the bioterrorism, anti-counter bioterrorism, but we know that he was doing that. There was somebody who saw him in a talk in the early 2000s around the time that the DoD was beefing up our anti-bioterrorism after the Amerithrax stuff that happened, where Elizondo was actually giving a speak to doctors and people who worked in that field. He was giving some sort of speech at a conference or something like that. So he did that sort of stuff back then that might have been linked with the CIFA stuff as well. But we don't know what else he did. Like you said, there's that one article where he's talking, or not article, it was a FOIA document where they found where, he was loosening some money on something, on a project, but we don't know what it's for.
Isn't it so classic, Manny, that's the article we found of him? It's literally, and I'll send it to you guys on X or something, but an employee's being like, I don't think we should be doing this. I don't feel comfortable with this. This is against our protocol. And it just and it's in an FBI report because it's all got investigated. And it says like, see if employee Lou Elizondo told him no, like send him the money anyways. It's all good. So Lou.
It definitely is, and it doesn't. I mean, it's kind of surprising, but on the same side, when you step back from a second and react to it, then you're like, no, I'm not surprised that he would do that. Because that's the kind of guy he is, man. Rules don't apply to him. Rules do not apply to him, and if he can lie about it afterwards, he will, and just lie his way out of trouble. So like, it doesn't really surprise me, but it's sketchy, and I would really like to know more about it.
So before we move on to like 3i or something like that, what's your guys' view on the shit show around the Hellfire and all that crap? Because when I looked at it and I'm seeing the guy release the video, and then in the hallway he says it's been stripped of all metadata, it was dropped into my email or whatever, and much in the same way Lou would do it. I'm just throwing it out there to see what you guys think. It just seemed like such a shitty thing to do.
Go first, Manny.
Oh, okay. So that video, the context of the video, the way that Burleson said he received it through a dead drop, like you were saying, Mark, where somebody stripped the metadata and all that, is absolutely ridiculous. And I feel like somebody was LARPing to cover their butt. There's no reason that, for one, that video, from the best of my understanding, came out of what's called a UAP folder on a SIPRnet server. So there's a secure internet protocol router network that's on the internet, SIPRnet. That's our U.S. government's kind of private internet on the internet that's classified, but they don't. There's another version that's for real classified stuff. This is just kind of for government sensitive stuff and unclassified stuff, but not for external release, that sort of thing. And you got to kind of think of it as like the government's Craigslist, or Facebook group. Like they have these different little subgroups in there where anyone who's on that server can access that folder. Now, in that folder is a bunch of other footage too. So I don't understand why they picked that footage in particular. Maybe it had something to do with earlier this year. Somebody had leaked information about that footage to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and they were discussing it on their podcast. And so somebody who's still on the inside heard the podcast, because there's a few UFO believers still on the inside who have access to that sort of stuff, heard that podcast and said, hey, went out and looked for that footage and found it, and then leaked it to Burleson. Because they figured they probably wouldn't get in trouble for it. But there is, as far as I know, people have asked for comments from the DOD on that, and they're saying they're investigating it. They're treating it as a leak, because it's not, even though it's unclassified and it really doesn't show much, people should not be inappropriately releasing information without clearing it. Now, as far as the context of what's inside the video, like, to me, it doesn't look like anything special. Like, yes, it's a Hellfire, but people who know what munitions are and know that Hellfires are very typically, like 99.9% of the time, are an air-to-ground munition. They're not shot at air-to-air targets. We would use things like an AIM-9 Sidewinder for that normally. That would be launched off of like a helicopter, or an airplane, or a drone maybe, but not Hellfires. That's just not what they do. In fact, I think the first time they've ever officially tested an air-to-air target with a Hellfire, a specific version of a Hellfire, was in Saudi Arabia, and that was last year. So they're starting to do that now, but at the time, I don't think they were doing that. So it was probably a strike of opportunity. Right, Gary. I think it was a strike of opportunity. Like, they just happened to have a drone in the way, or drone out there that was able to launch that munition, and they probably were like, you know what? To hell with it. Let's see what happens if we shoot a Hellfire at that balloon or drone or whatever it is that the Houathi's flying at one of our boats. It's not going to, if it gets in close enough, the close-in weapon system, this CIWS, will take care of it. So it doesn't matter if it gets too close.
The Hellfire isn't usually equipped with explosives. And the popular thing with it is to put those samurai swords inside.
Right, the kinetic, and then the blades, right, that pop out at the last second. Mm-hmm.
Last second, it just shreds anything it hits. And but when you watch the video, you see that it doesn't explode; it just strikes it. And I don't know. For me, because again, this is that parallax view thing where they're like, "Look at that thing moving! It's moving so fast." No, the plane or helicopter filming that is moving. You don't know how fast the freaking object is moving, if it's moving at all.
Right. So a good example of that is when you're driving down the highway and a tree whizzes by you, right? It looks like the tree is going 50, 60 miles an hour. but it's not. It's stationary, and you're moving by it. Well, that's the same thing when a drone is circling a slow-moving object, like a
and
slower
locked on the target, and they're locked on the target
and circling
it's still
it.
moving. Yeah,
right. And there's plenty of footage out there we can find of these drones circling and doing that. And, like when it's over land, the parallax view doesn't seem as much because you have objects of reference. When it's over the ocean, you can't tell, there's water. Or if it's over clouds or something, you can't really tell. And I think that's the low information zone. I think that's why people pick these sorts of footage. You notice that Flare, Go Fast, and now the Hellfire rocket are all over water. So there's no point of reference. So they can say whatever they want about it. They can say it's moving at 8 gajillion miles an hour, and you can't argue it. You're like, well, I mean, I guess. I mean, like, probably not, but.
Well, not without the telemetry that was done by whoever was following it, because they should be able to report to you how fast it was going.
Oh, they knew exactly how fast it was going. They knew exactly the region. They knew the time, the date. They knew the encounter. They knew that there was an order to fire a Hellfire. Hellfire rockets aren't just fired without somebody giving an order, and there's a paper trail for that sort of thing. So, like, Burleson at one point says he knows nothing about it, and then, I think 5 minutes later, he's saying, "Oh, it's over Yemen in 2014," and then you go and look, and over Yemen in 2014, we had Houthis shooting all kinds of crap at our boats and our Navy and other.
In 2024, right?
Correct. Yeah, in early 2024, and in late 2023, even there's dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of these things that were shot down and intercepted.
I guess my question regarding footage like this is, and I get a little bit of this from Mick West, other than governmental claims, do we have any evidentiary proof of what that is, other than what the government wants to tell us what it is? Do we have other videos that look similar? Well, they don't shoot Hellfires at balloons or whatever, but it always bothers me that we're still relying on the government to come clean. How come we just can't get confirmation? And Mick West does a lot of this by the numbers on these things, right? And he confirms stuff. And I don't know if that's been done with this, but it almost seems like you throw it out there, the government says we're looking into it, and we move on.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of more, I'm not saying it's for sure something, but I'm not all in on it not being something. I think, let me see, general thoughts about it. Yeah, I do kind of agree. I think they're doing some kind of dance. I think everyone involved in that hearing knows exactly where it came from, but they're trying to do some weird, and I guess if there is an investigation, which I think I saw reported too, into where it came from, I could see why they're doing that. But the whole hearing was kind of like the George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell show. So I'd imagine they all know exactly where it came from. And Luna and Burleson are both adamant that it is in a balloon, and they've responded to it. We are in that low information zone. I do know the War Zone, that publication. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, and they're not even really UFO people over there, although they do cover UAP, but kind of almost from a debunking stance. They had a bunch of interesting articles about this, and I don't know. I think it was the first time ever filmed publicly in an active combat zone of an MQ-9 firing a Hellfire towards an object.
Air to air.
An air to air, right? So that's kind of interesting on itself. I will say this though too. I do that's what I love about this field, right? Even if it is kind of get debunked, we all learn so much fun stuff. I don't know. I kind of like the debate, and I like it being injected. Although, of course, right, if it does end up being conclusively debunked, then that would suck. But I don't think we're there yet. But I am surprised that Chris Leto and even I think Matt Ford and some of these other people were quick to say I think Ryan Graves too, right? Some of the pro-disclosure people were even I don't know if that's. I don't think that's what's being described. So it is an interesting thing to see.
Well, it's interesting that if you have some people from Congress saying it's not a balloon, all right, okay. Then if I run with that, then I'm left with, oh, it's not a balloon. It got hit. It kept going. And 3 of those little objects have brains attached to them, and they're following it around. You see, it opens up this whole nother can of worms that's unsubstantiated as well.
Yeah. And where's the rest of the footage? Why did it cut out right after that? After those 3 pieces came off, there was only a couple of seconds of additional.
It goes for 20 seconds more, where it zooms out. But yeah, I would love to have a Nimitz type situation where we have the drone operator and radar operator on the boat kind of situation. But maybe we'll get that. I don't know. You would think they would know better though. But then again, they did kind of shill Bob Lazar at the hearing, and he's kind of not like necessarily the best foot forward, right, on terms of like credibility. You know what I mean? So
Now,
that would be like having Jaime on.
Well, was that the same one where they show Musan in the back falling asleep? Was that the one?
Yeah, the same one. And apparently there's all this
one.
drama that him and Danny Sheehan apparently like cut a bunch of people in line with like big old posses, and they didn't have reserved things. And so he cut a bunch of people in line to fall asleep. I find that pretty funny.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, if Don has no problem with it, can you fill us in on your research on the 3-Eye Atlas? Because it's a bigger shit show than I've seen in decades.
Why the hell would Don have a problem with that?
Well, because you might want to go somewhere else.
Go for it, Manny. Go for it, Manny.
I don't, I'm not a big believer in Woojiboo things like,
Woojiboo, like it.
Woojiboo, yeah. And, I don't know. I've been looking at interstellar objects. First we had One-Eye Borisov, then we had Two-Eye Oumuamua. Now we've got Three-Eye Atlas. So since we put the James Webb Space Telescope up there, we've found 3 interstellar objects confirmed from outside of our solar system. I think it's fascinating. I think it's great. I also think that in that time, if we've noticed 3 of them, that probably in the last 1,000 years, there's probably been a few hundred of them, if not a few thousand of them come by. And it's probably more of a regular occurrence than we ever speculated, just because we didn't see them. We didn't know where to look for them. They're coming out of the sun. There's a lot of technical reasons that they were hard to detect before the James Webb went up, which is why we never found any of them that we could confirm. But now that we have them, I think we're going to be finding a lot more of them. We can't keep saying that we can't pull an Avi Loeb and be like, everyone's an alien. Oumuamua, it's all aliens. Everything's aliens.
That's not what Avi Loeb said.
Well,
okay,
no, but
he said that we can't entirely rule out.
Yes,
and
he gave math,
something.
but he gave math attached to it, right?
Yeah.
That for me, that's problematic, because when my wife says there's a 20% chance of rain, there's an 80% chance of sunshine. So when he says there's a 40% chance that it could be something else, for me, as a dummy who barely made it through junior college.
It pisses me off.
Uh-oh.
And I'll be the first to tell you when shit like this is misreported. Okay? Now, if he was doing a Jaime Maussan horseshit job talking about aliens coming in on what's probably a spaceship, then I could get behind that. But that's not what Loeb said.
No,
and who is Loeb? Who is he? He chaired the Harvard Astronomy Department, for God's sake. So this guy, to me, in many ways, is a hero. Why? Why do I think, in many ways, Avi Loeb is a hero? Because he was a guy that was not too chicken shit, like most of academia, to think a little bit outside the box, just like Oumuamua, okay? My God, when Oumuamua came through the solar system in 2017, it sped up on the way out. Has anybody been able to explain that satisfactorily?
No, but like what Manny said, until we had the technology, we could have thousands of those speeding up as they leave.
We can't. Well, yeah, we don't have the data yet, do we?
Right.
We have something that bears further exploration.
Absolutely. I think he's a smart guy. Problem is I can give you over to people who are smart in other parts of archaeology and things like that, who are otherwise looked at as experts in things. They don't generally put percentages on their predictions, because that's what this is. It's a prediction. He can do it if he wants. I'm a nobody. But they don't generally put predictions on the second coming of Christ or whatever. Now, granted, some do. But I mean real people, real researchers who look into stuff. They don't.
Hey, there are morons out on the internet right now screaming that this is the final days. hang on, gang, because the next thing, everybody's going to get sucked up into the sky.
Right. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people who are actually credentialed to look in. They have a lot of background, like Abby Lowe, but in a different subject matter. You're hard pressed to find people who are going to put a percentage, a number on their predictions, because that's what this is. It's a prediction based on his background and stuff. Okay, great. I kind of hope it works out. And we have the Will Smith thing that happens where Don goes out to pick up dog shit and he looks up and he goes, holy shit, Loeb was right. Who knows, right? But it is interesting that such a well-respected guy would make a prediction with a number attached to it. That is interesting to me.
Leave my dogs out of it.
I can't.
Manny, I've got a question for you, my friend. Are you happy with yourself? You triggered Don.
Yeah, absolutely. It's making for a great conversation. You know,
energy. Yeah, I love the energy. I will say though too, there's this other like behind the narrative with all this stuff of like there's an imminent alien invasion coming, or this 2027 stuff.
2027, right? Which,
I don't know. I think that should kind of be talked about more. How like a lot of people behind the scenes like believe something is that, and I don't even know if they believe it, but I think it's a tool that really radicalizes people. I've definitely seen multiple people who like once
let me tell you something, Panda. Let me tell you something. A little about me.
Way to go, Panda. You did it too.
I've been interested in this going back to the early 60s. Back in those days, and I was a kid then. Back in those days, there were people you may or may not have ever heard the name, people like Frank Edwards. Okay. Now, Frank Edwards was a guy that wrote a number of books that detailed real weird anomalies that have happened to people that have never been explained. Mainstream media would never, for the most part, touch them. And, for example, he wrote a book, Stranger Than Science, I think. Stranger Than Weird, a number of books, but look up his name, Frank Edwards. So anyway, in 66, I had a hell of a UFO sighting. Not just me, but three of my buddies. We were deer hunting in December of 66. Now, that basically piqued my curiosity for the rest of my life, but it wasn't until I met then, not my wife then, but I met the woman I married who had just started a publication. She was a journalism graduate, okay, had worked as a straight journalist for a number of years, but in 86, there was something that piqued her curiosity, and she and her, what turned out to be her business partner, a lady by the name of Sherry Stark, began UFO Magazine. I came on board in 88. Now, in the Army, when I was in the Army in Southeast Asia, I was in intelligence, military intelligence. And that's basically the kind of work I was doing. And the first thing my wife, who was not yet my wife, told me was that this field, UFOs, is a super playground for military intelligence. Mm-hmm. And she was absolutely right on the money correct. And over the years, I saw it, I investigated it, I documented it. Things like Richard Doty and Paul Benowitz, William Moore, and his working to disinform individuals, researchers in the UFO field directly from his government handlers, bullshit documents, lies, and dissemination. Now, that was how many years ago? 36, 37 years ago? Here it is, 2025. And you're surprised that this horse shit is still happening?
Even with the thing that's happening with me right now, Richard Doty's still involved.
I know it, and it pisses me off.
He
that
accused
son
me
of a bitch, how he can put his face out there, pisses me off.
He accused me of calling the wife of his dying, or the hospital of his dying wife while she had cancer, to harass her, just to like inflame the people who are like actively like making weirdo threats to me and trying to get my channel taken down, which is something I would never do. If you pray for Mrs. Doty. But like, he's still at it. Him and Lou are riding and
He's
dying.
a lying piece of shit. All right, I said
they're both part of the deep state, and I believe that religiously. That this all was set up as a false flag, and I don't know about obvious position, but I believe those guys, because we know that Lou came from a military intelligence background, and he's still working for them. Anybody still working for the U.S. government? Don't trust.
Of course. Hey, let's go back to 2027. I on YouTube, if I recall correctly, I forget his name. The guy with all the tattoos, not Lou, but the other guy.
Corbell?
Yeah. He came out with an update to that not that long ago, right? And if you can give us just the thumbnail on what they mean by this 2027 thing, where it comes out of, and your view on it.
So I could do that. So broad picture, and I did a stream on my channel, Red Panda Koala. Go check it out with Fringe and Doomer and Tupa on this. But this current iteration really stems from like Chris Bledsoe lore. Y'all familiar with him?
Yeah.
The entities allegedly told him 2027. And also the Arts Parts letter, if you guys recall that. In there's something about like 2025 or 2027 that all kind of gets like something big is going to happen there. Lou has said,
God damn it, do I got to wait 2 more years?
Maybe. Hopefully nothing will happen though. But yeah, so that's kind of been picking up. You have people like John Ramirez and also like Anjali, who I am a fan of Anjali. I think she's a nice lady. A lot of people seem to think something bad is happening. I also know, so one thing that I've covered that, like, kind of people were talking about was Leslie Keane and stuff. Okay, so I have a friend who's in this field, right? Kind of a younger guy like me. After one of these conferences, he basically got invited to this, like, dinner party thing with some of the other, like, influencer type people or whatever. And they basically, like, told them that, like, yeah, a lot of them think the world's going to end soon and all the UFOs are going to come watch the end of the world and stuff like that. And
did anybody mention how old the fucking world is? 4.5 to 5 billion years old.
It changed my friend for a few days.
Don, please, Don.
I'm anxious to carve that damn pumpkin, all right?
I guess.
I'm sure you guys are around in the 90s, right? Wasn't it kind of similar with Hal Bopp and like...
I don't know. Were we around in the 90s, Mark?
I can't guarantee.
It's funny. Up until a couple of years ago, we would talk about the 90s as the heyday, right? The heyday. There's nothing like what's today. It's way worse because of social media. And let's call it, in a general sense, AI and the videos and just the constant drumbeat. It was nothing like this. Nothing like this.
Whole new world.
Well, yeah, the Hale Bopp comment.
Right.
Okay. Actually, I was involved in that. I managed to totally alienate our old buddy, Chuck Schrammick, the guy that sent the photo to Art Bell, that Art Bell put on his website, the Saturn-like object. Okay, remember that?
Yep.
Schrammick was a friend of mine. Okay. I was doing another radio show then on the cable radio network. And Schrammick, who was in radio himself down in Houston, listened to the show religiously every week and would call me up, and we had a hell of a good time. Well, when he sent that to Bell, Art Bell, and I'll never take any of it away from Bell, not a thing. He was the consummate showman. But when it came to releasing real, legitimate, honest information, he was a circus clown, okay? Totally a circus clown, Art Bell was. And he was shameless about it. Just very briefly, not to get off on a rant, but a guy that used to particularly piss me off was Major Ed Dames, Dr. Doom. Okay. You guys know that name, Ed Dames?
Yep.
Is that one of the remote viewers? Is that like one of the remote viewers?
Yeah. He was never, by the way, a remote viewer in the Stargate program. He never did any remote viewing. He was a monitor, okay? But his reputation, like so many people in this field, got inflated, okay? A great deal inflated. So anyway, and I still have audio recordings of Dames coming on Art's show talking about this comet had a spaceship behind it that released a canister headed toward Earth of plant-killing pathogens. It was going to impact on the planet. This is what he remotely viewed. It was going to kill all the vegetation. That meant the cows were going to die. Milk would be contaminated. There would be dead babies everywhere. And the jet stream would come down from the sky, going 200, 300 miles an hour and totally destroy everything everywhere.
Nice.
He said that on Bell's show. What did Bell say? What did Art say? Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Good golly.
That's going to be scary if that happens.
Good golly. Let's go to commercial.
You know what's crazy about that too is didn't that all kind of and I don't blame them, the remote viewers, but the coverage on there kind of led to the Heaven's Gate suicide, right? Which I would
Heaven's Gate suicide, okay? And I really got in the middle of that because the second that story broke about those 39 morons who drank the Kool-Aid and all ended up dead, okay? Every whack job in the freaking country ended up calling UFO magazine. I did more TV and more radio then than any six guys. Yeah, what's that?
That's
the picture.
Chuck's.
Is that Chuck Schrammick's?
That's the companion with the comet.
Right. Yeah, but those more. Do you know one of those guys was Nichelle Nichols' brother?
Yes.
Oh,
Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, the original series?
Yep.
Wow, no.
And he killed himself.
Wow.
So anyway, that was, and then everybody started blaming Art Bell across the board, okay? And Whitley Strieber, all right, another paragon of virtue, ended up going on Larry King Live to explain the whole thing, that him and Art actually exposed it all, which was total bullshit. Okay, total bullshit.
Well, in a way, they did expose it. They just didn't tell people that we don't know what this is and you shouldn't kill yourself.
Yeah. Oh boy, I'll tell you, why am I still in this goddamn outfit? I don't know.
Well, because
it's a lifelong love.
You can't turn it off, Don. You can't. We put a quarter in you, and you go, baby.
I just had I'm curious what Manny thinks about this. There are kind of parallels to today where there's this imminent alien thing, right? And there actually already kind of was a murder tangentially related to it, not a suicide like in the 90s, but the Chris Gray. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. I won't go into too much detail. Christopher Gray. He was one of these psychos weaponized online to be little attack dogs, not necessarily for Lou. Before, at this time, it was like the greater TTSA movement, right? But he actually went crazy and ended up stabbing his dad 110 times and talking about the aliens are coming and that he's talking to the lady that Chris Bledsoe is talking to. So this not a mind virus, but this thought has already kind of led to literal violence in the modern disclosure movement, which is never talked about, that Chris Gray thing. But yeah, man, isn't that kind of interesting how this imminent thing can really lead to some violent ends? Because he's talking about they're coming. I think he might have even said 2027 in the murder video when he's standing over his dad. That was sent to a bunch of people online.
What the hell did he take it out on his father for?
I don't know. No idea.
Over 100 stab wounds.
Yeah, look up Christopher Gray Scotland and you'll find it. But I kind of get the vibe that he was trying to do some kind of ritual too, which is another weird thing that's beneath the surface. A lot of this stuff is this like occult influence that's going on. But I don't know the specifics. Actually, it's on my to-do list. I want to like reach out to him because he's still alive. He's just in a Scottish prison, I think mental ward or something, but his dad's dead.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was clearly mentally unbalanced. And unfortunately, you see that when people like that get online, they get targeted by people who are on the extreme kind of spectrums for different topics because they're easy to manipulate people like that. They'll believe anything, whether it's political or whether it's disclosure related or whatever. It's real easy to get people to, once they're on the fringes, to believe conspiracy theories and things like that. And especially once they start to isolate them. And like you said, Red, we are seeing some parallels with, these kind of disclosure movements where they're isolating themselves. They're targeting people who don't agree with their point of view. People who don't toe the party line are kicked out, kind of like almost like a Scientologist blacklisting, whatever they call it, that open, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called.
Fair game.
Yeah, fair game. Yes. Fair game. So there's a lot of parallels there. And, I hate to say that it could end up in violence, but it already potentially has with the Christopher Gray thing. And then we see another thing where there was another person who was in that group who was potentially, thought that they might be dying because of cancer or something like that. And was like, hey, before I go, I'm going to take a few of those people out who don't agree with this, things like that, so like it could definitely lead to violence. I really hope it wouldn't. But when you start coupling things like extreme beliefs, isolation of people from critical points of views or pragmatic thinking. And then you add in, doomsday forecast, 2027, the world's going to end. People might just say, what the hell? If we're all going to die in 2027, why shouldn't I go out and take a bunch of people with me? We're churning the waters up and we're creating this environment that's going to be rife for this. And if it happens, then we can't say we didn't see it coming or try to blow the whistle or warn people, because a lot of us have, a lot of people here have. We're doing it right now, trying to say, hey, it shouldn't be happening. People need to tone down their rhetoric a little bit. People need to talk with people who disagree with them a little bit more. Just because someone doesn't agree with you about UFOs.
Well, Charlie Kirk discovered that doesn't work.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's again extremism. Like the person who did that to him probably fit a lot of those same archetypes that we're just talking about right now.
And the sad thing and concerning thing. Yeah, and the sad and concerning thing about the UFO field is there is a lot of like kind of mentally unstable people, but instead of there being like an outlet, instead of there being like an outlet or like, here's what you should do if you're feeling this way, there's literally like counter intel trained gangsters.
We got one over on the end.
Yeah,
considerably mentally unstable.
who know how to profile people, know how to cultivate assets, and they like Manny said, they prey on these like really mentally unhinged people that honestly you should probably be getting help and not be putting on these like weirdo little missions by counter intel agents. You know what I mean? It's sad.
Well, I'm not gonna totally freak, Panda, until I start seeing them wearing furries. If I see furries.
Hey, Panda, you're not a furry, are you?
I am not a furry, but that is funny. That's what Lou's lawyer is calling me, a furry now. So I don't know. I'm not really.
Oh my God.
It's so funny. Yeah, I'm not a furry. If people want to be furries, that's cool, But yeah, not my cup of tea. I just like the red panda hat.
It's a bigger problem in the society we find ourselves in, though, because when Kirk gets killed, assassinated, immediately you have people coming out saying he was shot from the back. Immediately, you have people saying, like Candace Owens, that he was murdered by the government and Trump and blah, 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 blah. And it just goes on and on immediately. There is no time for thinking. You just get that stuff out there as quickly as you can. So even if you want to have a conversation with a flat earther or a denier of the moon landing or whatever, it's sad to say, but it's kind of a waste of time at this point because they're getting inundated with this stuff. No matter, I mean, as soon as it happens, right? The 3-Eye Atlas, all of this stuff.
By freaking design, Mark. By freaking design.
Well, I think some of it's by design, but some of it's just a lot of people in the greatest nation that's ever been with a lot of free time with all these tools at their disposal. Anybody can do this stuff. I've heard great AC/DC funk songs, and I'm like, holy crap! I've never heard of AI, right? And anybody can do it with a point, right? So it's a little different though when you have Candace Owens saying that he was murdered, and if you ever get a street and something else in your honor, they'll kill you for it. And it's like, this chick used to be smart in my mind, right?
I'll be honest. I think there's some sketchy stuff with the way that all went down. There's this SAIC plane that's flying overhead. I don't know. I still have questions about the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but see, I'm not going to respond other than to say this sucks. He shouldn't have been killed no matter how it happened, right? 100%. So I'm just not going to really respond to it, but I think we're so far down the rabbit hole now, it's only going to get tangentially worse.
And I don't know if you guys talked about, but like some of the rhetoric being thrown at me and Tuba from the Lou crew is fairly concerning, especially when you consider that Manny, when he had a brush up with them for his documentary, that they showed up to his mom's house.
Have you contacted law enforcement?
FBI and local law enforcement are both fully aware of what's going on.
You look at Tim Pool. He got swatted like a dozen times.
They're saying things like, I know people who have been killed for less than this, that someone's going to show up to my door. Lou's on their stream gassing them up and saying like, these problems take care of themselves. It's like, what do you mean by this, Lou? Like, it's just so dumb. Especially, it's just, I'm not a fan of the rhetoric. I want to be very clear. I'm not a fan of the rhetoric that the Lou crew is injecting.
They do use their followers that they know are unstable. They do that.
100%.
Well, it is interesting. The oldest guy out there now who's still a lunatic is Greer. And I don't know of Greer people that go out there and like shill for him because he's messed himself up so bad with what? Predictions with math attached to it over and over and over again. I'm not putting him on the same level as Loeb Don, but he does make those predictions with math attached. I think he shit the bed. And
well, boys, we believe it or not, we've already hit the top of the hour. We've got to go to break. Every week I struggle with missing the break. These guys know it. Gary especially. Gary will be right at me. Don, go to break. Go to break.
Go to break.
Go to the restroom then and get some water. And I'll be back.
We're gonna go to break. We'll be back. Stick around. This is Dark Matters Radio tonight. Manny and Red Panda, and we got more coming up. And we are back. Well, Mark, Gary, and I are back.
I'm back too.
Oh, okay, good. So anyway, all right, Gary, you've been not too vociferous with your verbiage. Do you got anything you want to?
Well, I know that we've had some comments in the chat, so if you guys don't mind, I'll just read them real quick. From Kentucky Skywatcher, it's refreshing to see these young guys taking the UFO field seriously and not falling victim to constant nonsense that is so prevalent today. Then we got from Rick Leganis's Wig. Right now, they're talking way above my pay grade. That was to you, Red Panda and Manny. And Kentucky Skywatcher again says, do these guys do their own research or do they have a supporting cast or people that work for you that help you out? I'm assuming you both do your own research.
Yeah, as far as I know, we both do. I know I do. I don't have anybody helping me. I wish I did. I could use some help. So if anybody wants to intern and, we'll accept pizza parties occasionally for pay, hit me up.
Where are you at, pal?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I know. What a horrible place to be right now, dude.
You smell any tear gas recently?
No, nothing but the trees, man. Nothing but the trees.
Okay, this one's from Rick Leganis's Wig. I'd be interested in RPK's and Manny's view on Dr. Beatriz Villarreal's research on vanishing light sources found on photographic sky surveys from the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a paper that was peer reviewed and has been causing quite a stir the last couple of weeks or last week or so. And I think when her study first came out, I think it was quickly dismissed because a lot of people thought that the plates that she was using had been damaged over the years because they were obviously they're 80-year-old plates from photographs that were taken that maybe she was seeing some sort of artifact from that. I don't know. Like it's real interesting. I mean, what could it possibly be? I mean, if we're talking pre-Sputnik and pre-satellites, there shouldn't have been any man-made objects up there in the sky to be photographing, right? So,
well, Manny, wait a minute. Do you know who Donald Kehoe was?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the books he wrote when he was running NICAP?
No, I haven't read them.
Okay. All right. In 1954. Oh, I haven't got there yet, Panda. I was gonna mention that when I stopped here, but in 1954, two objects showed up in Earth orbit, reported on in the papers. Okay. And scientists then, remember, this is before NASA, before our space program got moving, okay? And scientists were then theorizing that what these were two asteroids. I mean, they were tracked on radar, okay? I mean, there was something there. One was 400 miles out from Earth. The other was 600 miles out from Earth. And scientists even theorized that once we got into orbit, okay, which is years and years later, that we could use them as a space platform.
Crazy.
One day they just showed up. And then before too long, they disappeared. Obviously, okay, they didn't come in and hit the Earth. They weren't asteroids. What they were, nobody can really say. But it, honest to God, and they were there. It sounds almost like some kind of spacecraft that was in orbit. Now, when I first heard about this lady and the paper she wrote, and I haven't read it. I don't have a copy of it. I wondered if she tapped into Kehoe's research and if she discovered that. Because most people today, you guys have never heard of that, have you?
I heard of Kehoe, but not that specific thing that you're talking about right there. Probably not off the recall.
Yeah, well, it's like everything in this field, okay? Everybody's memory is like a flash drive, man. With a power outage, boom, it's gone. But yeah, it actually happened.
In one of the early books of Jacques Vallée, he talks about the exact same thing. He doesn't come up with an answer or anything. He just, he talks about it. So
I do find the Menzel connection to this whole Beatrice thing and the, what is it? I forget what they're called, photo tapes or something like that. I find that interesting.
Donald Menzel?
Yeah, because he was super involved, in my opinion. Well, officially in Blue Book and stuff like that, but I think like to the cover up. He
was the great debunker.
He was the first one, even before Hynek, really, on TV and doing that.
And it later turned out that he worked for the NSA. Okay, National Security Agency, NSA, no such agency. Now, isn't that amazing? The way the government debunked every bloody report they could debunk. And he was the biggest debunker and a liar to boot. And he was an NSA, or had been at least, an NSA employer.
Here's my question. What do you think? Because, I looked at his life, too. He actually does have a very fascinating life in science. Like, he knew Einstein when he was young and part of that emerging physics kind of world, and astronomy, of course. What do you think motivates people like that to go in on the cover-up? You know what I mean? They seem like truth seekers and
I wrote a paper about a little over a year and a half ago, called Disclosure, a dangle just out of reach. And in that paper, I detailed that in 1947, probably the Roswell event, whatever that event was, I don't know. I mean, I knew and know the people that most in-depth researched that. Schmidt, Randall, Stanton Friedman. Of course, Friedman is now deceased. But they were in the middle of that research. And I am firmly convinced by not only those guys, but some others, that something by the powers that be was discovered. This is in my document, the paper I wrote. And whatever that thing was so frightening to the military and intelligence authorities at that time that they classified it as highly as they could possibly classify it, surround it with an SAP, which means a special access program. And if you are not read in to whatever that thing is, you will never know what it is. And to even acknowledge that you're aware of an SAP, you can't even disclose that because you'll be liable to federal penalties, okay? I think people like Menzel were brought in and told just enough to convince him that this material can never be disclosed. And I've watched it all the years I've been involved in the field. I've butted heads with anybody worth butting heads with in the last almost 40 years. People at the Pentagon, people at NASA, every skeptic worth their name in the country at one time or another, I've either debated with or I've been on the outs with. And the bottom line is, I am convinced that whatever that thing is, it will never be disclosed. And this whole disclosure movement, well, I'll be very blunt. It's bullshit. It's never going to happen. And besides, if the aliens, the so-called aliens, the ETs, the visitors, whatever the hell they are something, okay, I'm convinced of that. They're real, or elements of them are real. But if they wanted to break this cover up, they could do it last week. And obviously they haven't.
Yep.
And if you've researched this field, okay, and believe me, I've done that for almost 40 years in depth. I've talked to people you wouldn't freaking believe. You'll discover that especially in the 50s and the 60s, we lost a ton of military pilots in pursuit of these things. Some, I guess, because of equipment failure, some apparently shot down, okay? We attempted to shoot them down, all right? Harry Truman, President of the United States, gave the order to shoot these things down. This is in the very early 50s. They wanted to know what the hell they were dealing with. The government, the Pentagon at that time, one of their generals wrote a document. They were convinced that we were on the verge of an ET invasion, okay? That's another little-known historical fact that today most people are not aware of. But let me tell you, they were concerned. And what that concern was, I speculate in my document what it might have been, but I have no proof of it. Well, that's not true. I do have some proof of it, that it involves hostilities, mostly in near-Earth space. But that's something. Hey, I'm gonna leave it to you, Panda, and you, Mandy, to follow up on that. See what you can dig out.
Hey, Don, when it comes to SAPs, I have a question to ask you that we haven't talked about. So when it's covered in an SAP, you can't talk about Fight Club. You've never been on Fight Club. I mean, it's just complete. It's dead. It's dead as far as the public is concerned, and other people in the government with compartmentalization, I would assume. So how does that affect, Don? And I think that's because they're all liars, but how does this affect the general public who are invited into skiffs covered in an SAP? How does it affect them? Because they aren't a government employee.
No, but they've they got federal law covering that. If you're exposed, when you go into a skiff, okay, the first thing they do, the very first thing, because if you don't do it, they kick your ass out.
They probe you. Yeah.
You gotta sign a document that everything you see and hear today,
Right.
you will not disclose. Now, what happens if you disclose it? What happens? You can be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And
The
depending upon
Espionage
what
Act,
it is,
10 years, $20,000, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, my point is this. Then you're telling me that, and I'll only use one name here, that people like Greer are bull-faced liars and they've never been in a skiff and they've never been invited into anywhere in Nevada or Arizona, and it's all horse shit.
well, I will presume that.
Well,
I wasn't there.
But he talks about it.
Yes,
So
yes.
you would presume that all
So
of
that should, if you're a bright guy, what's that tell you? Is this guy telling the truth?
right.
I don't know. He sounds like a lion, dog-faced pony soldier to me.
So you would presume that if you're called into a black ops or into the skiff or whatever to talk to these people, all of that's going to be covered in a compartmentalized SAP. For him to even say that he was called into that skiff
It's
or
illegal.
into those
Yeah.
black ops is saying too much right there, right? And he's not the only one to say this happy horse shit. A lot of these guys have, and nothing's ever happened to them. I would say there's two reasons nothing ever happened to them. They're using them as patsies, or it's all horse shit. Or
It's all fabricated. Yeah.
Wait a minute. There is one guy, okay, and I've witnessed things similar to what happened to this guy when I was in the military, okay? David Grouch, was authorized to go in and testify to Congress by his command staff. He was authorized. They said, okay, you can go in. You can talk about this, you can't talk about that. One of the things, by the way, let us not forget that he was not authorized to talk about was Roswell. Aha! Why is that?
or murders.
Well, he claimed that he wasn't authorized to talk about that.
But to get back to my point, okay, what did they do to Grush? Somebody tried to totally destroy the man by releasing his medical records. Okay.
It's unlawful. You can't do that.
Exactly. And I'm curious if anybody conducted an investigation on that, because if I would have been the investigator, and I was a criminal investigator, I think I could have tracked that guy down real quick.
Now, would there have been a reason? Here's something to discuss, because I'm always coming at it from this angle, because I'm an asshole. Would there have been a reason for him or his people to release his personal medical information for some reason?
Not that I'm aware of, because it was very embarrassing for him.
Yeah, I agree with Don. I don't think they would have released that information because it was pretty damning. The information that was released showed that he had a problem with alcohol, was forcibly checked into a mental institution for a 72-hour hold. Things that cast his credibility into question. And so I don't think they would have released that.
I completely agree with that. So why, after a year and a half, have we gotten nothing tangible from that guy?
Oh, well, no, my theory on that is, and this is a theory allegedly, I think the same people who doxed him had a hand in that, because they do this weird thing where they'll do like street theater things for people to like. So I've covered on one stream, I did a whole stream with Tupo where we just went through various UFO people who had a UFO sighting, like after hanging out with Lou Elizondo or something like that. And after you hear story after story after story, it almost seems like they have a little op where they have like a drone ready to go for someone to kind of like invigorate them. And I've actually also seen that too on the person-to-person side where, and I won't go into too much detail about it, but there's Matt Ford, you guys are familiar with, right? Like he had this weird story where he had a street theater event, which is when people come to you in real life and they're kind of like talking to you about stuff that they shouldn't really know about if they were just a total stranger. And while that's happening to him, Lou is you could surmise Lou is texting him being like, oh yeah, no, this is happening to you. Like the story you just dropped, it's super serious. And that's why it's happening to you. And if you listen to the whole story and he's talked about it publicly, like it seems like the only person that would really be in a position to do all this stuff to him was Lou. So it seems like there's this almost like, you know what I mean? They'll scrape someone on their own team to kind of like bring them in closer to the fold. And that's kind of what I got from that. And honestly, if we're being honest, like, I don't think anyone really even cares about like what that thing was. If anything, it was like, it sucks that it got out for him, but it's kind of almost been a net positive. I think the whole way that went down, right? Like the talking point of it and the way it's like, oh, look, see, like, you know, he's telling the truth because look what happened to him. I don't think anyone's like, oh, he's a piece of shit, you know, because, you know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh, PTSD veterans, rightfully so, right? But that's just my theory. I think whoever did that to him, or however the reporter got that information, was a little closer to him. Also, another thing too is the Lou crew and all these people, before the article even came out, they were saying that the 2 guys from the CIA leaked it, and News Nation had to officially retract that claim because we actually talked to Ken Klippenstein, the author, in a space, and he had already talked to Ross Coulter about it and explained where he got it from. So apart from just the already crazy dynamic, there's this element of that whole story where it's like, why is this group saying something that is not true and had to be officially retracted by News Nation? Like, why did this whole group that was also connected to the doxing of them just make up this story of where these records came from? You know what I mean? That all factors.
So Don, I'm interested.
Very convoluted.
And Grush comes out, he tells all these stories, third-hand stories, evidently. And
second and third hand, yeah.
And
he also was very careful that he informed Congress that he personally did not witness any of these. So I give him credit for that.
Well, right. So what was the point? Telling stories that most of them we had heard of before, and then saying, I can talk to you about stuff like the murders, the dead people from, you know, ray guns or something in a skiff. What really was the point of him as a whistleblower to come out?
To feed the beast.
But you can't have it both ways.
No. Think about it. Think about all the true believers, the UFO field and assorted fields around. And suddenly, after 70, almost 80 years, there's congressional hearings that had everybody with a boner, okay? They were excited. There's still people today that are excited about that. But ultimately, and you and I discussed this, Mark.
Yeah.
What's the bottom line? Nothing more has come out. But then we get the clown show. Okay. We get the Corbells and even George Knapp. And I've known George from day one. Okay. We get these guys out there. And what ultimately comes out of it? More kerfluffle. Look at what we're doing tonight. This is all kerfluffle.
Well, right. It's kerfluffle, but you have an unknown person.
By the way, that's a technical term, Panda. Kerfluffle.
You have an unknown person who comes out and he tells second and third hand stories. Many of them we already knew. You have all of the videos that are released. I won't discuss those right now. And yet, the end result, or to what end does this nobody come out to do this? He's a nobody. Nobody knows this guy. So he's thrown out there in front of the cameras and tells these stories, right? Again, many of them we already knew. And then he goes away, and now he's working as a producer or something.
And let's not forget, too, like we said in the beginning, he was kind of, what I surmised is that he didn't want to come out, or maybe he was getting cold feet, and they like pushed him out. And us even covering that is leading to us getting these weird threats. So there's this like weird dynamic about how he even came out. I wish he would talk more. Apparently, he's going to do an interview coming up soon. Apparently, he's working also for Rep Burleson, so that's cool.
Right.
Yeah, I think Coulthard said he's got a new interview coming out with Dave Grush. Some other things to kind of put it into perspective too, though, is remember that back in 2022, there's pictures of Dave Grush, and he's going to UFO conventions, Star Trek conventions. He's hanging out
ahead of time.
He's hanging out with Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp. He's hanging out with I think at one point, even Eric Davis confirmed that him and before Grush had anything to do with the UAP thing, that they worked together. That at some project that Eric Davis worked on, David Grush was like a security agent or something like that on the project that he worked on. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. Eric Davis says a lot of weird stuff, and I don't
He does.
I don't really believe him. The more his eyebrows bunch up and down, the more I'm skeptical. The more I'm skeptical. The more they bounce, I'm like, wait a minute, he's telling a whopper.
My theory on that salad interview is whenever he's like eating fast, he's probably lying.
Right.
Well, it would be nice to know or be able to ask Grush some basic formulaic questions like, why did you bother? You know you're telling stories that are second and third witness stories to the public. Why did you do this? Well, to what end did you do this for? Because it either has to be that he was pushed out there. It has to be that he likes the attention. There's got to be some sort of driving fact to put you in that position, because it puts you in a very uncomfortable position to do something like that. And like Don always says, and then to mention that people are getting killed because of the UFO situation, or however he put it, but I can't talk about that now. You're put in a very uncomfortable position there. Why would you do this?
Well, he does seem like a Boy Scout. I feel like he believes it all. And I do believe a lot of it too. And I'm still supportive of that dude.
Well, if he did, then he wouldn't have to be pushed out there. He would just do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, for sure. But also there is kind of the thing of like, there's believing and then there's like being public with it all. So I could see how someone could believe and not want to be like out in the public with it all.
Sure.
Something
well,
happened to him.
No, he could have said no in the end, right? He could have said, I ain't doing this. Leave me alone.
He could have, but remember what he was doing before this, which was he was a realtor in Boulder, Colorado. He was selling real estate, selling homes. He was doing nothing. Like you said, Mark, he was nobody. He had already been forced to retire in his early 30s, or had chosen to retire in his early 30s for some reason. Who knows why that is? But he had left the military, left the intelligence community, and had gotten a realtor's license and was selling homes in
I think it has way more to do with those pictures that these guys befriended him and they started going to these conventions and filling them full of horse shit.
It's very possible that he was a source for the early days of George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell on their podcast, where they were getting things like the jellyfish UFO and all the insider footage that they were getting. A lot of people have suspected that he was the source for that for them, because it seems like when he left the intelligence community and became a private citizen, that source kind of dried up for him.
It did dry up. That's true.
So like the timing, plus them being seen together at conventions up to 2 years before that, there's a lot of people. I believe that. I mean, like, but it's just my opinion at this point, because I wasn't a fly on the wall. I wish I could have been. Going back to the disclosure thing, though, that Don was talking about a little bit ago, Colonel Carl Nell was one of the big people, too, in this whole. He's one of the players here. A lot of people will recognize his name. He was on the UAP task force, I believe it was. After leaving the government service, he went to go be on the UAP Disclosure Fund, along with Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo, some of the other people that were there. Earlier this year, he left the UAP Disclosure Fund, and just most recently has said this disclosure movement that started in 2017 is dead. He says there's no path forward for it. The UAP Disclosure Act has failed in Congress 3 times in a row. It's never going to pass the way that they want it to pass. He says it's time to take a look at things, see what worked, and try to work with that some more, and look at the things that didn't work and get rid of those. And so he's really coming out and kind of saying what Don is saying. At the end of the day, what do we have that we didn't have 10 years ago? I mean, we have a UFO office. We have a UAP office called Arrow that the mass majority of the public doesn't trust unless they say it's a UFO or an unidentified. If it's something recognizable, then nobody wants to believe them and, wants to slander them and say, oh, don't trust them. They're misinformation or whatever. But still, we're going back to what you said earlier, Mark. We're still having to take the government's word at this. Right. So we really don't. What do we have that we didn't have 10 years ago? So
was this? Did Burchett say this again? You get overwhelmed with this. Did Burchett say a couple of weeks ago on an interview that that disclosure is not going to happen in the way that we'd like it to? It's going to take somebody from a secret location, a black site out there to come out with something and post that shit onto YouTube and get it out into the public immediately before they're stopped. That's how this would
He said
start.
that or Trump, or like it'd have to be like straight up the president, but that they're hitting roadblocks. And I'm probably going to cover this later tonight on a stream or something. But
this country today is so chaotic that literally, if a UFO UAP landed literally on the White House lawn, okay, there would be a vast segment of the population that would think it was AI created bullshit.
Of course. Yep. Of course, just like the flat Earth when they went up there and they said, "Oh, well, this was shot in a studio." Duh. It's like, oh God.
Yeah, it would take a massive sighting over a major urban center that was verified by public interest as well.
That happened.
Yeah.
That happened.
Phoenix Lights.
The
Phoenix.
Yeah, I agree.
Will Smith sighting. If you have a Will Smith episode where you're coming out to pick up your dog shit or pick up the newspaper and you look up, that's what we're talking about.
Or like that 80s TV show V, where a major giant UFO flies over every major urban center on the planet at once and just parks there.
So let's find out what Jaime Maussan says.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I've believed since it happened that Corbell is part of this disinformation thing, and that the reason he had David Grush at that same panel, that press conference, as Jaime Maussan was to do damage to David Grush.
Look, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, never even played one on TV. But when I was working on the street, that was a job I had to do often, okay? And speaking about Jeremy Corbell, several years back, he did a documentary on, of all people, Robert Bob Lazar. Did you guys see that?
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I actually went to the premiere. I went to the premiere in Hollywood.
I watched it, and I got to tell you, that wasn't about Bob Lazar.
No,
it was about him.
That was about Jeremy Corbell.
Yeah, he was establishing himself as a know-it-all in this field, as a personality in this field.
The shots of him in the bathroom with the purple light looking at it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Dude.
I thought it was great, dude.
It was great television.
I asked my buddy when we watched that documentary, right when that happened, I'm like, are we supposed to drop acid or something to watch this? This is like really weird shit right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I renamed it. I call it Jeremy Corbell and My Friend Bob is what I call that show now because like you said, it was all about him. Yeah.
I met him actually in the bathroom when I went to the premiere in downtown LA.
Okay, don't brag about that, Red.
Yeah, I know. Okay, that sounds worse than it is. We both happened to go to the bathroom at the same time, and I was like, watching my hands, like, oh shit, you're the person who like made the whole thing. Yeah, nothing sketch happened or anything like that, but it was cool to see in real life. I forget where it was in downtown LA.
I think that same premiere, was that the one that Tyler from Secure Team 10 was at, where he had pictures of him and Jeremy Corbell on the red carpet and all that?
Oh, probably, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
I got there kind of late though, but yeah.
Now who was it? I think it was Corbell. He kind of floated the idea to Lazar without actually asking him if he would come to Congress, and he said basically, "Why should I? There's nothing in it for me."
He doesn't want to. He's got a ranch here in Southern Oregon, and he's more than happy to leave it once a year to go to the McMinnville UFO Festival outside the Trent Farm, where the Trent UFO photo was sighted or taken. There's a big UFO festival down there. I've gone to it a couple of years. It's a lot of fun. They do like a 4-block parade, and he gets to ride down on the back of a car and be a local celebrity. Elizondo was there this last year. I looked for him, and I couldn't see him. I was hoping I'd bump into him on the street.
Oh, you were there?
Oh, yeah. I just want to shake his hand. And
you were there? That was the Skiff Flu thing, right?
Yes, it was.
You were there for that? That's funny.
Yeah, that's where Elizondo, amongst other people, was scheduled to go into the Skiff with Luna and decided to go to the UFO convention instead. And one thing about the Skiff, since you just brought it up, Mark, or Red brought it up, but it's something I wanted to say earlier. Mark, you were talking about how Greer claimed to have been read into these secret programs and been put into a Skiff. I don't know about being read in on secret programs, but I know that even the guy who goes in to empty the wastebasket in a Skiff has to have a security clearance. You can't step foot into a Skiff unless you have some level of secret clearance or higher, which is not remarkably difficult to get. But there was one thing that Burleson said, that they couldn't get David Grush's clearances correct and proper for him to go into the skiff, and that tipped me off on that thing. So if Greer's saying he's been in a skiff, pretty sure he's lying, because I don't think he holds a security clearance of any kind. Same goes for George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, or any of the UFO podcasts.
Man, he'd be bragging about it if he had a security clearance.
Right.
Right. And then, and there are certain journalists who say that they have refused them because along with a security clearance comes a liability to not talk about things that are classified. So if a whistleblower does come to you with something that's classified and you want to publish it, but you have a security clearance, you're hobbled. You know, like you can't hide under the journalism, banner anymore and say, there's a public interest, I'm going to release this. No, you lose that right when you take a security clearance. So with access comes limitations, and I don't think Greer has those limitations, because what he says, man, like if even half of it's true, he shouldn't be talking about it at all. So yeah. So
a friend of mine from Florida he postulated this to me, and I don't know. Favor, he was fired and he lost, evidently, there's no way to really know this, because I think you can actually be fired and still keep your health insurance and your retirement and stuff, depending on where you're fired from and how you're fired. But he was fired, and supposedly he lost all of the benefits. And my buddy said, and I don't know anything about this, he said, nobody's talking about why Favor was fired. Why was he let go, and why would he give up all of those benefits that he had to risk being fired? Do you guys know anything about Favor and possibly why he was fired or let go?
Give me Commander Fravor, the pilot?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I hadn't heard that he was fired or that he had, there are many ways, like we were talking about Doty earlier. Doty actually 2 years before he retired was kicked out of the AFOSI. He spent his last 2 years in service as working in craft services, food services, something to do with the kitchen. So he was basically kicked out because he screwed up, but they didn't kick him out and discharge him without benefit. They let him do his last 2 years, and then I think 2 weeks after he hit his 20-year mark so he could get his benefits, he officially retired. So he got his, there's ways that they do that to people where they kind of let you fall on your own sword and they demote you to some garbage position, but you're still allowed to keep your pension, your health benefits, your VA benefits, everything else, but it's still early retirement. And I wish, in a way, I kind of wish they wouldn't do that. In some ways I get it, because if somebody like even Doty, if he was 2 years from 18 out of 20 years, you don't want to screw him out of his 18 years of service, but he obviously did something really bad to get kicked out of the OSI and, to be peeling potatoes at the chuck wagon. You know what I mean? I really wish I knew what he did. And, the real story, not his version of it, the way he tells it, it's like, oh, he went too far and was too zealous in investigating some sort of, deal that he was, ordered to investigate, but may have crossed a line or two. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what horseshit is that? You don't get kicked out for 20 years of service for being a little too zealous on an investigation. If anything, they give you an attaboy and tell you to rein it in next time, but maybe something like that happened with Fravor too. I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to someone who worked with them, and the only people we know who really did that are Alex Dietrich and his Wizzo and things like that, who are not going to say a bad word about him, even if it's true. They worship the ground he worked on.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's I'm the most skeptical I get, other than when Stephen Greer is on, is when we have somebody that's actively working for the federal government or the Department of Defense. Part of these meetings, because I'm like, well, what are they doing in there? Because if they are really telling the truth, they're committing career suicide. And if they're not telling the truth, they'll continue working for the government. And you see these guys still in the military afterward, and I'm like, yeah, that lends to bullshit to me.
Yeah, and the SAP thing is so important, right? When Don wrote about those, I looked into them and I said, wow, those are the way to shut everybody up or control what they're saying.
Yeah. And in 1947, three things happened right after Roswell, whatever that was. The Air Force became the Air Force. They stripped it from the Army.
Mm-hmm.
the Central Intelligence Agency came into existence, and most ominous, the National Security Act was signed into law. Now, that is truly scary because under the guise of national security, if someone is deemed a national security threat, and that is big stuff, Bubba, big stuff. Anything up to and including assassination can be legally carried out.
Right. And
now, I'm not saying they'd whack somebody every time. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But depending upon circumstances, they can whack somebody.
And of
now,
course,
think about that.
Of course, somebody could say, in 47, Roswell was the trigger for this stuff to happen. Let's say it was. Well, the analogy is 9/11. Look at what went down after 9/11, Don. All this new shit got brought in to tighten it up.
Well, and Mark, and to that point, if you go back and look at newspaper articles from the early 47 before Roswell, you'll see that they're already talking about the National Security Act and the reformation of the Department of Defense.
Right.
That's
right.
all that conversation happened for a good year or maybe even 2 years before that ever was signed into law.
It did, but there could have been a trigger that they said, well, let's make it happen.
That's true. It could have been the one that pushed it through.
Well, there was something else that happened that nobody has yet mentioned in light of all that. Nuclear weapons. Suddenly, they were a thing.
Yep.
And the huge freak out was that the Soviet Union, the Russians, were going to get one. And they did in 49.
Oh, it didn't take them long. Yeah, it didn't take them long, a few years. Like to once they knew the technology was there, that there was a viable weapon, it didn't take them long. And we knew that
China was
happen.
the 50s too, right? So everyone was pretty
60s.
quick.
Yeah.
The 60s?
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. I'm getting so tired of this, man. I'm just overwhelmed with horse shit on YouTube and Facebook, and it's just like, oh my goodness, man.
Take
we
a
can't
break,
turn away, huh?
Take a break, dude.
That's healthy.
Really.
Honestly, it's really, people should take breaks. If you're ever burnt out on this stuff, it's good to take breaks.
100%. It'll still be here when you come back, and you will miss a little bit, but you'll catch up.
Grab your guitar, man. Go
You'll
out
catch up
and play
quick.
some tunes.
Well, it's like the sneezing monkey. He's not doing public stuff for the last month. He's doing some private stuff, but I mean, the guy was just putting the stuff out like a yeoman, right? Very funny stuff, and he was on the show, and we liked him a lot. But he's taken a month off now from the YouTube thing, and he's just doing the privates to the people that support his channel. That's an example of that.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, to go back to something you were talking about earlier about people keeping their security clearances and working for the government after they're so-called whistleblowers.
Yeah, right.
Like there was a statement that came out that Elizondo was working for the Space Force, and a lot of people were like, wow, what's going on with that? The actual statement was that he had been advising Space Force, and so I don't think that was an actual paid contract position. I think he was like a volunteer advisor because he still held his security clearances. And if you go back to right after he came out, there was an interview with him and Harvey Levin on TMZ, the most credible investigative journalist out there.
Yes.
Harvey frickin' Levin of the People's Court, but anyways, in that interview, he's talking about how they were threatening his security clearance and things like that, and how he wouldn't be able to feed his family, and he was going to have to take a job as a grocery clerk or things like that. So at least to Elizondo, it was real important that he keep his security clearance. And now we kind of know why. Is I've seen documents. I found one on the internet that was from March 2022. It was a PDF file for a Department of Energy National Nuclear Safety Advisory Board meeting. And who's there but a guy named Luis Elizondo. And he's contracting for Consolidated Nuclear Security, I think is the company name, CNS, as a weapons and safety analysis. He's a chief engineer. And so he's doing some work for the DOE as a contractor then. And the year before that, I've seen another document that shows that he was contracting in 2021, I believe it was, might have been 2020, for the Air Force in some capacity. I don't know what that job entailed, but I do know that he was still at that point. Now, bear in mind, that was all before his book came out, which I think his book made him a lot more money than people suspect. I think it made him financially stable, which I don't think it probably should have, considering the whole thing's a fiction and it was marked as a biography. But because I haven't heard him talk about any contractor positions or lament about money since then. Instead, you see him traveling quite a bit and, going on.
Making weird threats with his $8,000 watch and building a bunker and a bar.
And he is. There's a photograph, like Red just said, there's a photograph where he's wearing like an $8,000, high-end watch of some kind.
It's the same one where he's saying he's going to shut me down. He's like rocking this big old watch. I'm like, dude, I'm broke over here, bro. Like,
yeah, it's ridiculous. But he's not hurting for money anymore. But, he probably.
I bought 2 of those books, by the way, too. So some of whatever they're going to throw at me, it's like I contributed to it because I've done that. I got the signed ones too.
So Red Panda, there's an opportunity for you to clear something up here. There's a question from the back seats. Ask RPK if he insinuated that Amy Eskridge was murdered, and ask if he claimed and repeated that someone told RPK Lou had a role in her murder. I don't know anything about this.
Are you familiar with Amy Eskridge at all? She passed away a few years ago.
I don't know who she is.
Manny, I saw you retweeted my interview with Mark. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. That was pretty interesting. That was his first time ever really talking about this whole subject.
I didn't, but I've talked with Mark about his relationship with her before off the record. So I'm kind of familiar with what his, quote unquote, his story is there. And I want to get it. I just haven't got a chance to listen to the whole interview yet. I've got it flagged and ready to go.
No, this seems to be one of the little vectors that the little Lou crew is all like raging at me about. I've never said Lou Elizondo murdered Amy Eskridge. I will say, though, I was told by somebody who was named at the last hearing that their UFO whistleblower group suspects Lou's group might have had a hand.
Yeah, and if you repeat something someone else says, doesn't mean you're saying.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think
what I
Lou
read
did.
into it.
But she did say that Lou, and this is a pattern I've seen, and I don't think this means that he murdered her by any means. But she did say that Lou was promising her contracts, right? And I've kind of seen that in other things, right? Manny, we've seen Lou lead people on with promises of this and that, and while at the same time it seems like he's kind of getting their little info. So that is an interesting dynamic, and she did say he was evil. So I don't know. I don't know.
There's actual audio of her in an interview naming him and saying the words Lou Elizondo is evil. She also says the same thing about Hal Puthoff. She says Hal Puthoff is evil. Now, I wish I was there to ask her to say, wait a minute, we need to dive into this a little bit more. How and why do you think these people are evil? What is the context of those statements? But unfortunately, she's not with us anymore. So we can't.
Well, I can tell you why Hal Puthoff might be Scientology. Hello.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I've got my thoughts about Hal too. My personal opinion is that if you were to take all of the disinformation or misinformation that Hal Puthoff and Rick Doty have spewed upon the ufology community and throw all that away, I think 98% of the garbage out there would be gone. I think the rest of it, we could actually get to some form of truth behind it, because there wouldn't be so much misinformation and chasing our own tails, trying to chase people's stories and garbage rumors and BS from all over the years. So that's my personal opinion, but I don't know what Amy meant. I wish I could ask her. And I've kind of stayed away from it. It's kind of sad because, the story that I heard was that she did kill herself. She was at her dad's house and, picked up a handgun and walked out to the yard and shot herself in the head.
Gentlemen, I've heard her name, but I do not know in what context she was involved. Enlighten me.
She was an anti-gravitics alternative propulsion researcher. So she would work with people like Mark, who we're talking about. Mark Sokol is the lead engineer at Falcon Labs, who's trying to recreate UFO technology using man-made technology. So they're operating under the assumption that things like quantum locking and anti-gravitics are real and we can replicate them using our technology. We don't need UFOs. They're working on it. They're part of
all right, Manny.
The Apex.
Don't use big words on here like gravitics.
or anti-gravitics. Are we on a 2-syllable level? Anti-gravity? No, it's still 3 syllables.
What does that mean? Let me look it up.
Right. But these are actual scientists. You can go look it up right now. Look up Falcon Research in I think they're in Massachusetts. They're on the East Coast, and you'll see they're in Jersey. There you go, and you'll find out what they're doing. They're really. They meet with the APEC guys, Tim Ventura over at the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference. They work with some of those people. And, there's a whole group of people out there trying to create flying saucers. They're trying to make it.
So this lady,
they're hands-on.
Committed suicide, right?
Yeah, but there's people who think she didn't. I'm on the fence either way. But either way, though, I do have other independent corroboration that she was probably being gang stalked. And what was interesting talking with Mark, what we surmised yesterday was she didn't really like have anti-gravity, but she talked a big game, and she was kind of a PR person for her group living in Huntsville, Alabama. So they suspect the Chinese were just kind of monitoring her because she kept on alluding to like, oh, I have it, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? I got to be secret with it. So even if you're bluffing, if the Chinese are thinking you might have it, you know what I mean? It could lead to, you know, gang stalking and Havana syndrome types of things, which Mark did report too. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like in her head that like some of these things were happening. So I think it's an interesting story either way, you know.
Red, do you want to give a quick rundown on who her father is too?
I think her father was affiliated with NASA, right? Not Mark Eskridge, Richard Eskridge. There we go. And he was he physicist or something like that too. He discovered some fundamental force of physics. Super involved in Huntsville, super involved in like aero defense, and so she grew up in that world. And apparently, it's really weird over
for
there.
real. Yeah,
She was for real. And, you know, like just like Red said, whether she had it or not, you say those kind of things on the internet, you're going to get on the radar of foreign intelligence services because they have to assume that you might have it.
Especially with who her dad is. You know what I mean?
Worse than that in this given situation. And you guys had a taste of that. And you look at what happened with Doty, you know, the shit that he did. It's like
he's still doing, by the way. This year, this week, to me,
driving a man to be put into a mental institution. Yeah. Okay. These people do this shit on purpose. Is that what happened to her? I don't know.
Exactly. That's what it's like. Even if she did take her own life, there's multiple people who are around her who did testify that like something she was getting fucked with, right? So over so long. I mean, how many people, Manny, do we know that have got our treatment that just kind of leave the field, right? I'm sure I know at times Tupo was like really bummed when some of the craziest shit was happening to him, you know? So it's
so hard to put somebody who's already emotionally unstable, you know, over the edge.
So Knapp says that he thinks he's got some element 115. And then if I remember this correctly, that's one of the reasons that they went in to Lazar's warehouse, yada, 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 right?
Yeah, and I think Richard Doty was on it, believe it or not. He's on, you can see him on the file.
Right, so we're thinking that you could make a funny connection that she's bragging, maybe for bragging rights or, you know, we'll go public or something, that yes, we have it, Knapp is bragging that he can't remember what he did with it, but I know I got some 115 around here somewhere, and then they supposedly go in there not even thinking about he's shipping some fairly dangerous shit around the country, right? Because that was his job in the warehouse and all that. Yeah. Isn't that interesting that they could have made her go crazy and do the ultimate deed to herself, maybe, and yet with Knapp, you know, he might have some 115 in his toilet tank, but it's fine.
I keep mine in the freezer, by the way.
Okay. All right.
I'm under the mattress. My element 115. I keep it under the mattress.
Yeah, it's funny that people have talked about how now we have Moscovium, which is the real element 115,
right?
And it's not the same. It's not stable. None of the heavier elements above that are. They're something about the makeup of them, but the electrons, there's so many of them that they collapse under their own weight. So you can have them, but for a very, very, very brief period of time. And as Gary just said, they're unstable. But they were predicted going back to the 1950s, I think, is when they first started predicting that they were going to find those heavier elements. And so everyone's like, oh, look, Bob Lazar's been validated, but it wasn't until 2013 or, you know, whatever, when they first. No, it's not. Like, all he did was read a bunch of science magazines and cobbled together a bunch of theories from other people. Yeah.
He said a number, which is the next number on the elements, the next step. So
it was only a matter of time till it was discovered. It was only a matter of time, you know, like, and you could theorize that we might find stuff beyond that and that it's also going to be unstable, but it's going to exist.
What if there was a counterintelligence angle where it's like they wanted that story out because for the next decade, Russia spent how much money trying to make Moscovium, right?
Right. I'm glad you said that because I think about that scene in The Men Who Stare at Goats where they're like, we can't have the Russians outthinking us in science research, psionic research. We gotta outdo them, you know? And I'm just like, holy shit, this is real. That stuff actually happened.
Well,
That's
guys,
how Reagan brought down the communist regime.
Yeah,
by making them spend more money than
defense spending, absolutely.
Bankrupt them.
Gentlemen, we're down to about 2 minutes, so I want to go first to Manny. And Manny, give the audience an update of what you're up to. Then I want to go to Red Panda. So go ahead, take it away, pal.
Sure, I'll be brief. Thanks, Don. I've been working with Bob Kvyat. We just finished our second project together, which actually has nothing to do with UFOs or esoteric stuff and has to do with the music industry.
Did Bob tell you how much he loves me?
Yeah, he said to tell you hi. So I've been doing that stuff, and we are trying to get back into the UFO stuff. I think the next project that we're going to work on will be more UFO related, knock on wood, if we can get that to go through.
What's the music thing about?
It's about Korean pop music, the girls of K-pop. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Sign me up.
There should be a news release coming out soon, and I'm not sure what I can't say about it. So I'm not going to say much other than that. Look for that. Yeah,
Panda,
that's fine. That's fine.
Panda, what's on your plate, buddy?
Dropping my part 2 drone doc soon, Mystery Drones. I'm working on a little explainer for what's going on with me and Lou and why his little fan club's acting all weird towards me. Also, do want to say real quick too, I appreciate you guys for having us on. Manny knows, like, a lot of people have made a lot of money off me and Tupa's X feeds that are acting like they don't see what's going on, and I love that you guys are just like zero fucks. Let's have them on. Let's talk about the dirty stuff.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the gutter that's really affecting people more so than like a fake UFO story is, if we're being honest. So I do appreciate that. And I got a Close Encounters of the Third Kind documentary coming up too with Spielberg and his early life. So I got some stuff on the docket that I've been working on and having fun.
Okay, well, gang, that is it for this edition of DMR. Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 Eastern, is UAP Crossfire with myself, Chris DiPerno, Commander Cobra, and the Padre, Dan the Padre. So anyway, we'll see you then. Guys, this has been great tonight. It's always a pleasure. Panda and Manny, when you're on, we want to have you come back. Please stay in touch. And in the interim, everybody, I hope you have a grand Halloween this week. Like I said, I'm going to be carving a pumpkin in the next day or two. In the meantime, keep your eyes pointed up. We'll see you next time. Mark, do your thing.
God bless Sam and Dean Winchester.
There you go.